And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. With a week to go in his two-term presidency, President Bush gave his final White House news conference Monday. Bush fervently defended his record, saying he made the nation safer following the 9/11 attacks. Asked whether he could now admit to making any mistakes, Bush cited the Mission Accomplished banner soon after the invasion of Iraq. He also listed what he called his disappointments.
There have been disappointments. Abu Ghraib obviously was a huge disappointment during the presidency. Not having weapons of mass destruction was a significant disappointment. I don't know if you want to call those mistakes or not, but things didn't go according to plan, let's put it that way. And anyway, I think historians will look back and they'll be able to have a better look at mistakes after some time has passed. Along Jake's question, there is no such thing as short-term history. I don't think you can possibly get the full breadth of an administration until time has passed.
The president also responded to a question about the responsibility of the office of the President of the United States and how he thought President-elect Barack Obama would handle it.
I believe the phrase burdens of the office is overstated. Yeah, it's kind of like, why me? Oh, the burdens, why did the financial collapse have to happen on my watch? It's just pathetic, isn't it? Self-pity. And I don't believe President-elect Obama will be full of self-pity. He will find, the people that don't like you, the critics, they're pretty predictable. Sometimes the biggest disappointments will come from your so-called friends. And there will be disappointments, I promise you. He'll be disappointed. On the other hand, the job is so exciting and so profound that the disappointments will be clearly, a minor irritant compared to the.
Never the loneliest office in the world.
No, not for me. We had people. I had a fabulous team around me of highly dedicated, smart, capable people, and we had fun. I tell people that some days happy, some days not so happy. Every day has been joyous, and people, they say, well, I just don't believe it to be the case. Well, it is the case. Even in the darkest moments of Iraq, there was, every day when I was reading the reports about soldiers losing their lives, and there's no question there was a lot of emotion, but also there was times where we could be lighthearted and support each other.
Bush was also asked about the federal government response to Hurricane Katrina in 2005.
Systems are in place to continue the reconstruction of New Orleans. People said, but the federal response was slow. Don't tell me the federal response was slow when there was 30,000 people pulled off roofs right after the storm passed. I remember going to see those helicopter drivers, Coast Guard drivers, to thank them for their courageous efforts to rescue people off roofs. 30,000 people were pulled off roofs right after the storm moved through. It's a pretty quick response. Could things have been done better? Absolutely. Absolutely. But when I hear people say the federal response was slow, then what are they going to say to those chopper drivers or the 30,000 that got pulled off the roofs?
Bush also talked about his relationship with the media, professing what he called his respect for journalists.
Through it all, it's been, I have respected you. Sometimes I didn't like the stories that you wrote or reported on. Sometimes you misunderestimated me. But always the relationship I have felt has been professional, and I appreciate it.
Despite his avowed respect for the media, Bush refused to call on the journalist Helen Thomas, widely known as the Dean of the White House Press Corps. Thomas is the most senior White House correspondent, covering every president since John F. Kennedy. Throughout the two-term Bush White House, she's asked some of the most critical questions in the White House press newsroom. She's challenged the Bush administration on issues including the Iraq War and its massive civilian toll, the threat of an attack on Iran, the refusal to sign a cluster bomb treaty, the ongoing killings of Afghan civilians, and its critical support for Israel's attacks on Gaza and Lebanon. One of the last times President Bush answered Thomas came in July of 2007. Bush reverted to a presidential press conference tradition he'd long ignored, giving Thomas the first question. She asked him about his decision to go to war.
Now I'll be glad to answer a few questions, starting with Ms. Thomas.
President, you started this war, the war of your choosing. You can end it alone today. At this point, bring in peacekeepers, UN peacekeepers. 2 million Iraqis have fled their country as refugees. 2 million more are displaced. Thousands and thousands are dead. Don't you understand? We brought the Al-Qaeda into Iraq.
Actually, I was hoping to solve the Iraqi issue diplomatically. That's why I went to the United Nations and worked with the United Nations Security Council, which unanimously passed a resolution that said disclose, disarm, or face serious consequences. That was the message, a clear message to Saddam Hussein. He chose the course. It was his decision.
President Bush answering Helen Thomas in July of 2007. Well, although the president did not call on her for his last news conference yesterday, we did call Helen Thomas, and she joins us today from Washington, D.C. Helen Thomas served as White House correspondent for United Press International for almost 60 years. She was the first female officer of the National Press Club, first female member and president of the White House Correspondents Association, first female member of the Gridiron Club. She has written a number of books. She is currently a syndicated columnist for Hearst Newspapers, King Features. Her latest column is called History Cannot Save Him. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Helen Thomas.
Thank you.
History cannot save him. Tell us what you wrote.
Pardon?
Tell us what you wrote in this last column, which is called History Cannot Save Him.
Well, I wrote that President Bush is passing on to President-elect Obama 2 wars and an economic debacle. I call it a depression, and he is arming Israel against the Palestinians in every way in Gaza.
Do you expect to see a change of policy,
I think it's an unconscionable legacy.
Do you expect to see a change of policy, for example, on Israel and the occupied territories?
No.
Why not?
I don't. Because I think that Obama had, during the campaign, made many promises, as every president, potential president, does to Israel, that they seem somehow bounded by their promises. Promises to uphold all Israeli goals. I don't see how the U.S. can provide F-16s, gunships, Apache gunships, phosphorus, possibly phosphorus, and cluster bombs and so forth to kill helpless people, children who are starving to death. They control the checkpoints, they control the arrivals and departures, supplies and people. And the Americans, President Bush has remained silent to that suffering. He has blocked, by a veto at the UN, any stoppage of the warfare, and he continues to supply Israel.
Helen Thomas, what did you think of President Bush's last news conference?
I thought it was nostalgic. I understood the reporter's soft questions. Obviously, they're always all writing about his legacy, wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt as to what his position was. And I think they gave him a platform of self-defense and self-delusion. The whole idea that it was a disappointment not to have weapons of mass destruction, a disappointment, significant disappointment, he said.
Helen Thomas, what would you have asked President Bush if you got a chance yesterday? Did you expect that he would call on you?
No, but I wish that he had, because I would have asked a news question. I would not have gone into the nostalgia, though I'm not